Hello, friends, and welcome, welcome, welcome. I forgot one of my connectors, so I am recording on Zoom today. So if there are baby little glitches in that, I apologize, but also that big new fancy mic that I invested in doesn't have the sound quality is all right. It's just really low recording volume. So I'm trying to figure stuff out with the audio still. We are going to work with hugging the outer hips into the midline and in general moving into the midline, right? Hugging the outer hips in, hugging to the midline. These are similar ideas. And the two things I want to say about that before we get too busy here with sitting down into our practice is that the midline is an invisible line that goes right down your center and divides you into a right side and a left side. So anytime I refer to midline, it's that invisible line down the center of your body. That's one. Two, before we sit down for our beginning awareness, we're going to take a belt. D-rings are best if you have a D-ring, right? But if not, you could use a bathrobe tie, something like that. And you're just going to tie that into place. Those of us who have the D-ring system, go ahead and make yourself that loop, right? That you can tighten, but which does not loosen. Step into said loop. Be cautious, be careful, use walls for balance if you need to. That may sound really silly, but there's nothing worse than losing your balance when you've got one foot in something and you're starting to fall, right? So from there, I'm going to bring that loop right up at my hip crease, right? So you could always bend, and right where you bend, that is the part of the hips I want to work with. So I'm going to take that strap and I'm going to tighten it in. Not so much that I'm cutting off circulation, right? Don't go egger on me right away, but enough that you can feel that hugging in to your midline. Yeah. And then we're going to play with that around our body for a little bit here. So make sure you're not tripping over the other end of that strap. I'm just going to tuck mine in to make sure I stay safe. And then come into your upright posture, whether that is sitting cross-legged, kneeling, sitting on a chair. You're still doing the same stuff you usually do. We just have this tool on us, right? And hopefully we're feeling how that hugging into the midline or hugging your outer hips in already, right? It starts to give some shape to the spine for most of us anyway. I don't want to put that on you by any means. But when we do that, when we bring that area in, it starts to help everything above it lengthen up, right? So go ahead and the usual otherwise. Hands can be on the thighs, palms up, palms down. Hands can be in the cosmic mudra. Right? Find your lengthened spine, your elongated spine. Finding enough oomph that we can try to find space between our vertebrae without being so oompful that everything is rigid, right? I just made up a new word as per usual. And you might get drawn to that pressure at the hips, right? And that's wonderful to notice that, live with that for a little bit. But then, you know, we always want to move beyond the dominant sensation coming in and check in with all of those other sensations. So as you scan through the physical body, just to start to take in any sensations you might be having. And a very well-known meditation teacher, Vipassana meditation teacher, Goenka, talks about going into a man who was sure he had no feeling of any sensation in his body and couldn't contact it, even as he sat there and sweat was dripping down his brow when Goenka was talking to him, right? So there is definitely numbness, pain, pulsing, throbbing, tingling, right? There is just space. And there's also hot and cold. My fingertips feel very different, both sensation wise, but temperature wise, right, than my armpits. And as we so often do, we're just really getting nitty-gritty, noticing these things to turn ourselves inward and make that contact become embodied, is another way I could say it. Go ahead and open those eyes. And as we start to move, we're going to actually come into downward facing dog right off the bat. Now, half downward dog or child's pose would be great. If you'd prefer to start there, it's winter time, so I usually have socks on. I'm going to take those off right off the bat here so I don't get too slippery. And then if you're already in it, awesome. If not, make your way there when you're ready. Just start to make your way back into your first downward facing dog, right? And I could have started us without the strap. Also an interesting study, right? Where we don't have that outer hugging in, and then had us put it on, right? And then see if we notice the difference. So I did not have us start with that blueprint, but I want you to go ahead and just notice if anything shifts or changes for you as you approach this first downward dog, with that idea of those outer hips hugging in and the strap there helping you do that. You can feel free and pedal the legs a little bit. We're just getting in there, right? And maybe you bend the knees, find the length of the spine and the heels, reach down. But I want you to go ahead and see if you can't imagine or start to find any of your own muscles you could turn on that would do the job of what the strap is doing right now, right? We're asking a tool to do the job for us, which is just great. And can that teach us how we might hug our own outer hips into the midline? And can we help the strap do its job? Take another breath. And then go ahead and bring those knees down. Knees wide, big toes touch. Come into child's pose. Any arm variation will do. Maybe letting those hips sway just a little bit side to side. Let's get a little side length before we come up again. Stretch your arms out in front of you, extended, right? Utthita, child's pose, balasana. Go ahead and walk your hands over to the side, right? So now we're in side child's pose, and just say hello to that left side body. Side is Parshva, Parshva balasana. Check into your neck, make sure it's not too tense, that upper left trap. Walk past your center, walk over to the left, and here we are in Parshva balasana on the other side. Again, check into the neck and the right upper trap, all the usual suspects that might be getting a little active when they don't need to. Come back to center. Reach those hands out, plant the palms down, put more weight in your finger pads, right? Or at least put as much of it in the finger pads as you do in the heel of the hands. And then come up to hands and knees. And one more time, moving back into downward facing dog, or half downward dog, or stay in your extended child's pose. Inhale that right leg up to the air and look back. Make sure those toes are pointing down, aka your inner groin is rotating up, and hug your outer hips into the midline, right? Bring that down. Inhale your left leg up into the air. Again, look back at your toes. Have those toes point down, inner groin pointing up, and then add in that hugging of the outer hips. How does that change the experience for you, right? And bring that down. Inhale that right leg up into the air behind you, and then exhale forward like you're coming into a plank, right? Shoulders over wrists, and then go ahead and bring that up. You can bring that foot down if that is better for you. My hip wants to move up so bad, I really have to focus on the inner groin. Bring that down. Inhale, left leg up, hug the outer hips in, pardon me, even as you move forward towards a three-legged plank, or a limbed plank, I guess I could call it, and send that all the way back. Set that down. Let's get out of our arms. You're just going to walk your hands back towards the back of the mat. Drape in for a breath or two and just let that upper back and neck unwind. Hands on shins, lengthen that chest forward. And again, pause right here. So I often talk about moving your thighs into an imaginary block, finding the pelvic floor, right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, we've been working with that. Now add in, what happens if you're outer? Don't do all of the other things for a second. Actually, I'm going to change the way I'm going to teach it. And if I'm not really turning on much in my core line, so to speak, hug your outer hips in where that strap is and notice what starts to turn on. And then if there's anything else you can recruit so that all of the muscles distribute the work, lengthen the spine, and then we're going to reach our arms out and up and come all the way up. Maybe palms come together, maybe not. Exhale, bring those hands down to the heart and arms by your side, pause. We're gonna do one more thing with the strap and then we're gonna ditch the strap and we're gonna try to find what that strap's been doing for us, right? So coming up to the top of the mat. So again, if you need to tuck that strap in so it's not all over as you move, keep it safe. Inhale, reach those arms out and up, palms come together, lengthen. Exhale, fold, hug those outer hips in, inner groin back. Reach the chest forward. Right here especially, hug the outer hips in, inner groin down and back. Exhale, folding in. So just a simple half salutation, right? Inhale, reach those arms out and up. That doesn't mean that it's nothing just because it's half and you're not doing a push-up. Exhale, hands can come down to the heart, or you can reach your arms out to the side, whatever works for you. Bring those arms down. Inhale, hugging the outer hips in, right? Having those legs in neutral rotation. Exhale right here. Try not to put too much weight in the heels, but keep the inner groin moving back. Hug the outer hips in. Inhale, lengthen right there especially. That's where we like to lose it a lot of times. Now bend your knees, plant your hands, step your right foot back, step your left foot back, and you're in the top of a push-up. If you need to move the blanket, you can. We won't be there long. Come forward on the tippy toes, come down through your push-up, right? Inhale, I would say low cobra. I'm not going to take an upward dog away from you. And go ahead and curl your toes under, maybe a half push-up, coming all the way back in a downward facing dog. You can ditch that blanket. I should have told you that before I went down the first time. Sorry. I could have told you that. Lengthen. Take an inhale. Exhale there. We're moving on this one. Inhale your right leg up into the air behind you. Come forward. Pull up away from the floor to step the foot forward. Notice how the hips really want to splay the right hip out to the right. So hug your outer hips into the midline. Step the left foot forward. Yes, that's slowly. Inhale, reach the chest forward. Exhale, folding in. And inhale, engage the outer hips hugging in and the whole core line to come up. Exhale, down. One more little thing and then we'll take the strap off. Inhale, reach those arms out and up. You could leave it on all day, by the way. Exhale and fold. For those of us with stuff going around the pelvis, inhale, lengthen. It's a helpful tool. It really is. Bend the knees, plant the hands, left foot, right foot. We're moving through a sun salutation again, right? Forward on your tippy toes, bend the elbows. Maybe you come to the ground, maybe not. And then maybe up a low cobra, maybe you're ready for that upward dog. Inner groin up, hug your outer hips in. And exhale back, downward facing dog. Take a breath, inhale. Weight in the index fingers. We've been talking about that a little bit because I have some sensitive wrist friends. Inhale the left leg into the air behind you. And again, reach that left foot forward, but try not to let your left hip pop out to the right. Hug the hips into the midline. Step your right foot forward. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. And inhale, coming all the way up. And hands at the heart or arms by the side. Pause and just notice what you notice. Okay, go ahead and take that strap or whatever you tied around your waist or whatever off. And again, you know, all these things, they speak more to some bodies than others, and maybe you don't even realize it. And a year later, you're like, holy crap, that's what she was trying to teach, whatever that might be. But, you know, hugging the outer hips in, I have yet to meet anyone it's not useful for. Some of us need it more than others. I need it a lot, right? I forget about it and then I don't do it. And then it's like, oh yeah, let's bring that back in, right? And it's always helpful for my pelvis, my hips, my low back. Inhale, reach those arms out and up. We're not doing a salutation, right? Sorry, pause. Have 2 blocks on high. Right, so we're just going to kind of go right into our biggest thing that we're going to do today, but it's a culmination of some of the things we've been working with the idea of the outer hips coming in. So it's going to be a balancing pose, much like we've been visiting lately. Inhale, reaching those arms out and up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, lengthen. Pause right there. Put your hands on your blocks and move your blocks a little forward, right? So that they're under your shoulders in this position. Now keep the knees just a little bit bent, right? And then we're going to go into a version of Warrior 3, but before you do, I want you to hug the outer hips in and imagine that strap is around your hips. What do you need to turn on to find that? Notice that you've probably engaged the pelvic floor. You might be able to help it a little more without being rigid, right? You've already probably engaged. Outer hip starts that whole lower basin, right, of the core line. And then keep all of that, even your shoulder blades, even the long neck, and lift that right leg up to about the height of the hip. It doesn't have to go that high. Look back. My right toes are turning out every time, 23 years later, right? Oh, rotate the inner groin up, toes down, push the heel into an imaginary wall, and now look down in front of the blocks, reach the crown of the head forward and turn on your whole core line. Now imagine or put your left thumb in your hip crease. This is what we've been doing for 3 weeks now. Push that hip back as you lengthen that leg and lengthen the whole left side body. Take a breath and bring that right foot down. Bend the knees a little bit, lengthen the spine a lot, right? And then from there, before you lift that left leg, again, hug your outer hips in. You're going to try to keep that the whole time. Find that whole hugging into the midline. And then maybe you lift that left leg up. Again, look back, inner groin up, toes down business. Push the heel into an imaginary wall and now reach the crown of the head forward and find the whole core line. Last piece, right thumb might come in right hip crease. Push that hip in and back. By the way, that is the outer hip hugging in. If it was out to the side, that means you're not finding the muscles that hug the outer hips in. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. Lengthen, lengthen, lengthen. Keep those outer hips hugging in as you replace the right hand down. Set the left foot down. Fold in, soften. Maybe grab elbow points or drape arms or whatever feels best for you right now. Soft neck, tongue and jaw. Hands on shins. Lengthen the spine. Exhale, fold. Inhale, coming all the way up, any arm variation, but hug your outer hips in, right? Really trying to get that in place for the week. And exhale, bring that down. Okay, so we're going to do one more thing. I'm going to suggest that you have a block outside your right foot. So we've been hugging our outer hips in, and we're going to do that. And we're going to add eagle legs. We're not going to do the arms for it. We will do that at another point in time, I promise you, right? And there's this thing that I call moving into the midline or hugging into the midline, where it's not just the outer hips, but as we go for the cross, don't do it quite yet. We're going to leave that block down there so we can really find this internal rotation and this hugging in that happens to lengthen the spine. Yeah. So have that block to the outer right leg. This will be the last of the work, and then we'll cool down, right? And come down into a mini squat. Now your hands are not on blocks, but I want you to imagine we just use them on blocks to find that length, right, of the whole core line. Hug your outer hips in so you feel that, right, support system. Hands are gonna come to the hips. You're gonna bend the left knee, lift the heel, not bend it, sorry, lift the left heel, reach it over, put it down on the, please use a block. Please, please, please be willing to, it's not about the balance right now. You'll find more of the internal rotation with the foot on a block. And then push down into both feet, hug the outer hips in, and now try to internally rotate your thighs into the midline and hug everything into the midline from below your waist. I mean, you can think of it happening above the waist too, by all means, but really it's the hips and the legs that are moving in, even the shin and the ankle are pushing into each other. Stand up and go ahead and release that. Just that today. Again, we're priming it. If you do the full 1 hour, we'll definitely move into that in more depth, but I plan on bringing that in through the week, right? And probably into next week. It's out my left foot. I'm going to bend my knees a little bit, right? Before I even lift that leg, hug the outer hips in, find 1 through 7. We've been working with that lately. Lift the right heel. And again, please be willing to use the block. I'm sure you can balance. You're an amazing human with great balance, right? But that's not what it's about today. If we push down into our feet, hug the outer hips in, and then if we internally rotate our thighs into each other, moving everything into the center, especially that lower body, it's really going to give us the most solid foundation. And then someday when we kick that block away, right, there it is. We've got the foundation. Come up out of that and release. Okay, so I want to stretch a little bit through here because we asked this to work a lot today. So come on down to seated. You can get there however you want. Feel free to sit upon a little bit of height. So for some of my friends, you're going to do right shin in front of left, Sukhasana. Actually, let's all do this for a second. Get nice and tall and go ahead and just start to fold over and just start to say hi to that outer hip, low back, anywhere you're feeling it. And you might even just let the body move a little bit, sway a little bit from side to side. Dance with me. I want to be your partner. Can't you see? Don't ask. I don't know. It just came into my head. Go ahead and come back up. So you can either keep that, right? You might even put an ankle on top, right ankle, on top of left knee. That would be another level of intensity with that. I'm going to go for the whale's tail, right? So I'm going to bring that left foot over by my outer right hip, cross my right foot over. I get nice and tall. I flex my feet for knee protection, and then I go into that same fold forward. And if I hinge at the pelvis, that's been 2 weeks worth of like, not intensity, but I've been really talking a lot about that, right? I think it's almost 3 weeks actually. Maybe. Today being what would be the 4th, right? And feel free to sway or whatever feels like it would be beneficial. We're probably more in the right hip, so I'm going to walk over to the left and fold over that way a little bit. It just changes where it is in my body. Right hip stays heavy. Come back to center, inhale up and release the kraken, the pretzel. Go ahead and cross your left shin in front of your right. Or if you can't be cross-legged, remember you have eye of the needle on your back. Get nice and tall. Most of my sensitive knee friends can still do that. Let's just go forward for a second, right? In this not quite as intense for many of us pose. Maybe sway and just invite those muscles, just a really lovely, gentle opening before we go to that deeper place potentially. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you come up, left foot on the ground, crossing the right heel towards that left hip, left leg over, flexing feet, get tall. You might stay right here. You might, from that hinge at the hips, start to fold in any amount. You can stay in stillness. You can sway, right? Maybe singing that song to yourself if you like it. If you don't, oops, too bad for you. Walking over to the right, and if that feels nice, that left hip getting heavy, take a second there. And again, it just might switch where it is or the intensity of the stretch. Got to be able to breathe, man. Come back to center. If you can't, your body's talking to you. Inhale up. And if you continue to not listen to it, why on earth would it stay healthy? I don't mean that meanly. Go ahead and come undone. That's the question I ask myself a lot. It's like how much I sometimes, or I used to for sure, and still sometimes abuse my body. It's like, I don't listen to it. Why would it want to, right? That's not a great way to say it, but I'll come up with better words next time. Go ahead and fold out over the legs. Let's just say hi to those hamstrings and do a forward fold for the cooling effect. Knees can be bent. You can be on more height. Soften the spine from L5 to C1. Use the breath, and if there's any area in your back body that could use a little extra space, the inhales are really great for that. Inhale the chest forward, come on up. And we're going to come into an upright posture and just end with a short meditation. If you'd rather lie down and do it from Shavasana, you are welcome to. You can take that Shavasana as long as you'd like, anytime. You never need my permission, right? Otherwise, find that upright posture. Now, we do not have the strap on our body, and I don't want you to do a lot of effort for long here, but just really gently at like 20%, right? Think of those outer hips hugging in. Notice if any changes happen in the body when you do that. And then just imagine that that's still going to continue even as you soften a little bit. So there is some muscular action to sitting upright. You can't get out of it. But we want the bare minimum that we need where we can still have that elongated spine. Notice sensation. maybe even the sensation of what moves when and where with the breath. Bring your hands together in front of your chest, inhale. And as you bow your head in, taking a moment to practice gratitude for at least one thing, especially as we move towards the longer days, the darker days, the cold days, the snow coming in, right? For many of us with seasonal depression or various things, this is the practice, right? There are others, but this is one that helps us. Namaste, friends. During these times, my two huge tools are movement, just making sure I keep my body moving. It doesn't have to be super crazy, intense movement, but I've got to move. If I stay stagnant, I right into depression, right? And then the other one is gratitude, just really over and over and over again, every time, multiple times a day, just finding things to be grateful for and focusing on that rather than all the things that I want to get really upset, depressed about. And for my fellow friends who also deal with depression, may you be well. I love you. Me too. I do too.